So, 2 months ago, I picked up the Headrush MX5. And after a little bit of playing around, I play guitar also, which is why I grabbed that. But after a little bit of playing around, I've been experimenting on it with bass. And I kind of like it. So I figured I'd just compare the two. There's not much on, you find a little bit on YouTube here about people using this for bass. Not a whole lot. So I'm going to basically, without any playing, there's plenty of videos out there you can find of people playing, hear what the things sound like. I'm basically just going to talk about some comparisons between the B6 and the MX5. Enough for everyone to do a little research on their own. But I'm going to start with the inputs. The B6, as anyone who has one knows, you have two inputs. Selectable. Have two basses plugged in. You also have, it's 1/4 inch. You could also have the ohm meter on it for a piezo or a standard pickup. The MX5 just has the 1/4 inch input. As far as outputs, the MX5 has 2/4 inch, so you can get stereo signal out of it, and it has a separate 3.5 mil headphone output. So you're not using any of these for your headphones. You can actually run this out to a mixer or anything, and that's strictly for a headphone. Now the B6 only has the XLR output. Okay, you can run this stereo XLR. Most things you're going to find out there to plug this into is not going to be true stereo. But the 1/4 inch output on the B6 is a TRS, so you get true stereo out of that. But there is no separate headphone output. So you're either running this into an amp or this into a mixer, headphone into it. So you're kind of, I think the MX5 is a little bit better for that, but it doesn't have the XLR out. You'd have to run this into a separate DI box to get the DI capabilities that the B6 has. Now, as far as the expression pedals, well, obviously the B6 does not have an expression. I have the Zoom B6 on, or the Zoom expression pedal plugged into the B6, but it does not come built in with an expression. And one thing, I'm all playing with buttons over here. And one thing about this, even though you can run the external expression into this, that's it. You can't run a second one onto it. I mean, you could probably put something in the effects loop, but that takes up a space. We'll get into that later. Now, the MX5 has its built-in expression pedal. This is actually really nice. It's pretty robust. For being as small as it is, it actually feels pretty good under your foot, but it has a switch as well. Kind of like a crybaby wah or something. You can actually select it and turn it on. I'm sure you probably can't hear that in the camera, but it's turning on or off. You can also plug a second expression pedal into this. So you can run two expressions, wah, volume, pitch shifter, detune, anything like that. MIDI, I don't use MIDI, but for anyone who does use MIDI, this does not have MIDI capabilities. The MX5 does. It's actually 3.5 millimeter MIDI plugs with, and it does come with the adapter to run it for MIDI. The tuners. I'm going to touch on the tuners real quick. Both of them, basically, just hold the button down. They're both just as accurate. I do have a Peterson strobo tune that I've tested these with. All of them come right together. So as far as accuracy, everything's good. I like the feel of the B6 tuner a little better. And what I mean by feel is when you're actually tuning, going back and forth. I just, I don't know, I like the needle display better than just the lights moving back and forth. I'm not that one's more or less accurate. From a distance, for me, it's faster on the B6. Now, the biggest thing between these is the processing power. The processing power on the B6 only allows for 6 separate pedals to be turned on. The MX5 allows for 11. And one thing you can do with the 11 is, like on this one, for example, for guitar, I have a bass cab here, or a guitar cabinet, and speaker. I can double that to where I actually have a true stereo head and a true stereo cabinet, and that does not take up any more or less, those other two. So you have your 11, but by doing that, that doesn't take up any other space. As far as on the B6, most amps and preamps take up 2 positions. So you're really limited in processing power, and it does have the percentage that you're using on this to let you know if you're maxed out. This, I've experimented with all kinds of different effects and amps. You don't run out of processing power. If it's capable of, you can put whatever you want in all 11 spots, and that does not affect it one bit. The effects loops, both have effects loops, but on each one, the effects loop does have to take a position. But you can place it wherever you want in the chain, but the effects loop does take up one of your 6 on here, or your 5 on here, or your 5, your 4, depending on what you're running on this. Switching channels between the two. Now Zoom has, pretty much when you select it, switches right to the next channel. You can go into your settings on the B6 and you can set it to where you can switch through to bring your channels up, and then once you actually engage the button, the channel switches. That's something that was on the B3, the B3N, something they've carried over to this, which is a nice feature. The MX5 has a feature, you can have the tail on or tail off. So when you're switching through, like if you have any reverb or delay going, with the tail on, when you switch to another channel or another patch, when you switch to the other patch, that reverb or delay from the other previous patch carries over only until the note fades out. So it's not just a sudden cutoff. So 2 different things. You can't really say one is better than the other. I guess this, depending on what you're doing, the MX5 is better. Or depending on if you want to get set up to the next patch while you're still going. I guess it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So on here, for switching back and forth, I'm just going to call this basically a gig mode. If you're in your memory on your B6, so you can have a bank, you can create a bank of your patches, and you have them up here, and you can select between them. The MX5 has a feature, they call it a set list. So you can create a set list of all, I'm trying to find it quick here. It'll take time. But you can create a set list and just put everything in order. And it doesn't affect where your patches are, the numbers, anything like that in the banks. It keeps it all pretty much laid out how it always is. See, I kind of lost what I was just doing, but that's all right. This happens. Anyway, what the MX5 has also, though, is you can set scenes up. So like, let's say I'm on this patch here. I want to go to hardware assign. I can come down here and set up a scene. And come back. So let's say I want the rotary speaker. Like, you can have anything on or off, any combination on how you want it, and you can set that up in a scene. So scene 1, let's say, would have the volume off, the reverb on, the rotary off. And let's say I had a distortion in there, it can have the distortion on. Scene 2 could turn the distortion off, the rotary off, leave the reverb on. Scene 3, same thing, whatever combination you want to do with it. It's kind of a really nice option, because instead of creating a whole nother patch, you can just do scenes inside of a patch. Just have one patch loaded with everything you want and just create different scenes. It's kind of a nice feature that I wish the B6 was a little more friendly with. I mean, you can obviously you can move patches around, create banks, set it up to how you want it. I just think that the scene is a really nice feature to have. Okay, as far as the body construction, B6, plastic, MX5, it's all metal chassis. Do I think this is going to break? Not at all. Modern polymers and plastics are, in a sense, just as strong. I'll quote that, just as strong as metal, as far as this is going to get crushed and dented. This is going to have some flex to it. This is pretty robust. I've been stomping on this thing for 2 years now, and it's in great shape. So I have no concerns with that. The knobs and the button layout, I have to give that to the B6. It's a little bit better. Not that you can't go through, I'm getting used to this. Once you get it set up how you want it, you can do everything's hands-free. I just like having, I don't know, you got the extra bypass, you got the that's just things that this doesn't have. I wish this, well, depending on the model of Headrush you want, could this use 1 to 2 more switches? Yes. Does it need it? No. Like I just mentioned, the bypass. The bypass, I love this feature. I wish this had a full bypass just by stomping on it. You can select it, get any bass tone, straight amp tone, whatever you're trying to mess with, on the fly without having to go through and turn things off. I do like that. So, my opinion on which of these would be better for bass, it kind of goes back and forth. If you're effect heavy, the MX5 wins, hands down. Straight, basic bass tones, which a lot of bass players use, the B6 is the superior controller, because it does have the DI built in, the XLR outputs. You can run 2 separate inputs, the bypass. As far as sound, man, having the two, you're limited. This doesn't have a lot of bass effects, but it's digital effects. It does have some bass heads and bass cabs, some bass IRs in it. The effects aren't really generated for a bass guitar like they are in the Zoom, but it's digital. You can play with it and you can find your tone pretty comparably to anything you're gonna do on I'll call it a bass specific pedal. Um, Both have USB. Both could be run as interfaces. I don't mess with that with them. Maybe one day we'll dig into that. But man, on which one's better for bass, I'm still sticking with the B6. But the MX5, well, I did take this on one gig so far. I was quite happy with it. Is it coming out on my next gig? No, but that's not to say I'm not going to use it in the future. It has so many capabilities more than the B6 has. But is all that needed? That depends on what you're doing. I'm currently playing in a jam band, um, and sometimes I want to get a little spacey. This lacks on that. But for 90% of what I'm doing, this is perfect for it. Is this going to make me add more effects that I don't need? Probably, but what's the problem? What's wrong with that? Yeah, that's what we're here for, to have fun. But anyway, I hope you guys just like this quick 10, 15-minute comparison of these two. I will be uploading more videos, diving deeper into the B6, and I'm going to really start to experiment with this and do a deep dive on this for playing bass. I play a 6-string normally. We're going to be doing some 4 or 5, 6-string. I don't do a lot of bass playing on these videos because, most people, there's tons of videos out there to find out and see what these things sound like. That's all you need is one more to play the same sound. But just for some experimenting, see what I'm going to do. We'll get some deep dives later on. One more thing before I forget. With some bass patches I've created on this, I didn't need to run separate pedals. This has the processing power that I need. All right, so we'll think about that. And I appreciate you guys watching these videos. Until next time, thank you.